always think of the Steve Jobs quote, which is marketing is about values. It's not about telling them about your product. It's not about do you need to know what the features and benefits are? Yes, but that isn't really what motivates people to buy. An example of our company Brand Lab is what we have a purpose where it is to help small business owners achieve their dreams. And as the founder, I have a personal story of why that's important to me. We try to implement that into everything that we do, where it's like, I want people to feel that we care about helping them achieve their dreams, that we don't want them to be stuck, that we don't want them to be bogged down in the day-to-day and overwhelmed. Like, we want to help you achieve the dream lifestyle that you're after, which is why you became an entrepreneur in the first place. And so that's an important part to have as a part of your marketing strategy.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and turn them into cash-based multimillionaire entrepreneurs. Warning, if you're a doctor who listens to this podcast regularly, you will make millions of dollars. Do not listen to this podcast unless you want to be a successful clinic owner who helps thousands of patients achieve their health goals and adds more money than you can imagine to your bank account. You've been warned.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we will give you the exact tactics, strategies, and mindsets that you need to fulfill your destiny by helping thousands of people in your community and dominating your market and your life. I am one of your hosts, Rory Morgan, along with fellow hosts Jennifer Gligoric and Tracey Sundkvist. By the end of today's episode, you are going to have your own marketing strategy on a one-page document. So you can say, this is who I am. This is what makes us different. This is how we're going to dominate our market. Now, I think we're probably only going to make it through half. So we might need to put this into another podcast episode to finish off that document, but we'll at least get started. Again, what I want to remind you of is be writing this stuff down. This is this podcast episode requires a lot of action to make sure you're getting the most out of it. I was thinking before we got started that I should give one more example from the concept yesterday of how marketing works. And the example I was thinking of was Five Guys Burgers and Fries. And the concept, if you think about when you go, the first time you ever went to a Five Guys, or if you haven't been there, you should go check them out. But the first time you go, and they do this every time, but basically if you order fries, what they do is they stuff that cup full of fries overflowing. They put it in the bag. Then they take a whole nother scoop and they dump it straight into the bag. So there's just fries. There's tons and tons of fries in the bag. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's really inefficient. Why don't they just, if they're going to give you that much fries, why don't they just give you, why don't they just use a bigger cup? So it's all full, right? Or maybe that's just kind of a waste of money. Why would you do that? But the reality is because they understand that their business, they're not selling fries. They're trying to create lifetime clients who love them. What they're doing is they're creating this impression to you that they're over delivering, right? So what you're used to, if you go to McDonald's or something, is it's like, oh man, the box of fries wasn't all the way full. I wish I would have gotten a few more. Well, you're never going to have that experience at Five Guys. You're going to feel like, holy cow, they just gave me so many fries. That's so cool. They over-delivered when I'm so used to being under-delivered to, right? And you can think about that as a clinic. Well, what are people used to when they go to the doctor's office? Stale, dry, receptionist isn't very friendly, right? Well, instead of just kind of oh, here's your new patient paperwork, take a seat, fill that out, super quiet. What if your receptionist got up from behind the counter, grabbed a flavored San Pellegrino and a water bottle, and walked over to that patient and said, hey, I just want to say thank you for being a patient. Which would you prefer, sparkling or clear water, or what is still water, whatever you would call it, right? And just kind of put it right there in their face. Which one would you prefer? Right. So you're all of a sudden oh man, they're over delivering. You're changing the experience that's offered. And again, that's marketing. That's not People might try to put this in this separate category of, oh, that's customer service. Well, customer service is a marketing decision. And that's going to increase the likelihood that person buys from you. That's going to increase the likelihood that they stay longer. It's going to increase the likelihood that they refer their friends. So, um, okay, let's get into actually building out this strategy document. The first thing we want to start with is the person. Who is the person that you're going to sell to? The reason we want to start with the person is because if you haven't identified who your product or your service is for and identified like, okay, there's other segments of the market that are probably already being well served, right? They already have a chiropractor, they already have a med spa. There's a med spa that charges lower prices over there, and there's a med spa that does this right here, right? If you haven't identified who's the person that's going to be my ideal client, who's the person that's going to value my pricing and the way I deliver and the attitude that we're going to have and how we're going to position it and how we're going to package everything, all those things we talked about in the last episode, then you're not going to have, it's going to be really hard to build out the rest of your strategy. The tendency that people have, especially in the clinical space, is to think, well, you
I
know,
know.
yeah,
I'm everyone. I deal with kids, I deal with teens, I deal with adults. I can get anyone who has a spine, or if I'm a med spa, well, anyone with a face. I'm going to help anybody with anything with your face or your neck. I'm going to help you with. You're going to be so beautiful. Or it's this catch-all huge net where I can help anyone. I've got the skills. I can do it. And when you're in that space, you're really broke and you're not really helping a lot of people.
100%. Yeah. If it's for everyone, it's actually for no one, right? When you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
why
when
they're
when you're
specialists.
trying to cover every single base, your messing is going to change and your delivery is going to change. So if you're saying you're for everybody, but then your messaging is around where the cheapest, you're really going to peeve off your more wealthy client base, because they don't want to be associated with cheapest. They want to be spoken to as though this is a power thing or a status thing or an ego thing or a novelty thing. Don't you dare insult me by saying it's cheap. And likewise, if you're going to position high-end service, you're automatically going to exclude in your communication people who are looking for value, looking for economy. So not value, everyone wants value, but value is unique from poor people to rich people. It's different.
Yeah.
But for people who are economic, they want to make economic decisions. They're going to make decisions based on what they can afford. So when you say you're for everybody, typically how we interpret that is that we just want to serve people who will say yes, because we're too lazy to find out who are our people who will reliably say yes, and we're going to work well together.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do that work to figure out who are those people. And it's not, what it was the example we had. Well, I want the moms. What was it, Rory? The moms who wear Lululemon and drive like an Esplanade, and they have a Stanley Cup, and they like going to Starbucks. And the person was a physician. Like nothing that they actually provided was the type of person that they said that they wanted to come in. And we were like, what does that even have to do with having a hurt back?
Real example of a client, right? My clients, and this is like it borders on inappropriate. But like my clients are moms of entrepreneurs who drive Range Rovers, have a Stanley Cup, wear Lululemon yoga pants, have a boob job, and go out to lunch with their friends every day. And it's like, okay, buddy. Like, well, first of all,
That's funny. Okay, buddy.
First of all, there's about
high coaching here.
There's about like 50 of those in your whole town. So maybe not even, right? So first of all, like we're really limiting our clientele there. But second of all, like how many of those are going to have the problem that you can solve? Like what are we talking about here? So yeah, that was a real conversation I had with a clinic owner. And it's like if you take that and you're like, okay, so what I would do if that's what you're saying your client is, what I would do is I would run an ad that would say, "Hey, sexy moms of entrepreneurs, when you're driving in your Range Rover and wearing your Lululemon, do you ever feel like you need to get an adjustment? Well, we're the perfect chiropractor for moms who love to have lunch with their friends," right? It's like it's completely irrelevant.
Absolutely irrelevant. Like even the mom, they'd be like sipping on their Stanley Cup in the Range Rover, going, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to be eyeing your boob job the whole time you're there. Like,
But let's
Yeah,
not poo
yeah.
poo, right? At least they had an idea that they wanted
yeah.
to deal with more. I very often get confused with affluent and effluent, and this is not a good confusion to have. So I'm rather going to say richer people, right? So they want to have a richer client base. There's a better way to do that though, without
Yeah.
using those words. So it's fine to want to position high end, but you need to be able to put your money where your mouth is. You need to be able to support that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not that it's a high end. So if you're looking you're packaging something to help people with sciatic, let's say that's really where your sweet spot is. They have this toothache, right, type pain that's going from their back. They have this shooting pain that goes down their legs. It's really starting to affect their lives, and you can get them back on track, right? Then you need to think about that type of person. But if someone is in that pain, if you can get them there in 3 to 4 months, let's say, to where they're out of that pain and they have a really good idea of their roadmap forward to not have to suffer like that, a $2,500 or $3,500 or even $4,000 package, if you're like, well, only Lulu people can afford that, you're nuts, because anybody's going to do what they have to do if they trust you and they believe that you can get them there, and you have demonstrated to them in a really good funnel and your strategy, which is what you're trying to build to get them there.
Yeah.
Then they're going to be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what kind of finance do you have? How are we going to get there? And let me tell you, you need to stop, as business owners, making these judgments on people based on how you perceive them. Because I had to close it during COVID, but I had a Cruise Planners American Express franchise, which is one of the best franchises you can get, but you only get paid when people get on the boat. And all I did was cruises. And I can tell you there were people that were dropping 5, 10, 15 grand on cruises that I would think to myself, man, you barely have a pot to pee in. Like, and they're talking about their benefits and their SNAP cards and their everything else. But yet that was important to them. Building those memories with their family was so important that they were saving up and they would do anything to go on that. And
Yeah.
so take that $10,000 cruise and think, well, if you'd invest $2,500 or $3,500 now, imagine how much better you'll be able to enjoy something like that when you can actually walk around or feel great or be at the weight that you want to be in, no matter what type of clinic you're in. Right.
Yeah.
So it is relative, and you need to just treat everyone the same, but you need to know who has that problem that you are uniquely positioned to solve. That's really all about the person and truly defining that.
So the next aspect that we'll talk about for a minute, we've already talked about it a little bit, so I think we need to define it better. Would actually be really, really well defining the problem. Um, but I just want to make sure I give everyone listening clarity on the person. So like if we're kind of saying all these things that it's not, well, what is the person? And what you're looking for is there's going to be some demographic information in there, right? For example, like 93-year-old men in a nursing home probably aren't going to be the right fit for Botox, right? Um, like that's really obvious. But I mean, you might have like 30 to 55, right? Might be an ideal demographic, and it might be men or it might be women, right? It might be, busy moms of elementary school kids or younger, right? These are the types of sort of generalized who is the person, but really what you are looking for and what you are going for is you are looking for the ability to simplify and codify the language that a person group uses, right? So if I sell products to chiropractors, I have to understand the language that chiropractors use about their situation. If I'm going to sell to busy moms, I have to understand that language, right? A weekend warrior who's like still sort of an athletic guy who likes to get out and mountain bike and play flag football with his friends every weekend, or probably nowadays it's pickleball, I guess, right? Is the big sport. But it's like, okay, that guy's gonna have different dreams, goals, ambitions. He's gonna speak about his frustrations in a different way than maybe the 69-year-old Medicare patient who just kind of doesn't want to be in pain anymore, right? So you have to the reason you have to define this is because when you run an ad, you send out a piece of direct mail, you go on TV for a TV appearance, you appear on a podcast, you are speaking to your demographic, and you can't go out there and just say like, oh, well, if you have a spine then you need this, or if you have a face then you need this, right? You have to speak to, hey, are you let's use, okay, so are you a middle-aged woman who is recently divorced and trying to get back in the dating game, and you're just not happy with what you see in the mirror, right? So like that's a specific demographic, and that's a very motivated individual who's willing to invest in their appearance, right? And so you can speak the language. So that's really what you're looking for, is like, how do I refine what I'm saying in my marketing based on making a person feel like this ad or this TV appearance or this podcast episode was just for them. That's what you're looking for when you're defining the person.
The
Yeah,
other great thing with that,
absolutely.
Rory, is when you connect that with where are you going to find them. So if you're in Florida, the Florida is the state capital for retirement. You know exactly where you can put ads or flyers, brochures, banners, billboards. You know exactly where you can position it because you know you're going to get in front of those specific eyeballs. So the
Right.
more specific you can be about who the person is, one of the things that's going to solve for you is where do they consume their information? Like, where are their eyeballs going to be, and how can you make sure that you're there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a
100%.
and then, we had talked about this in an earlier episode. Please go look at that about joint ventures. Where and then that would be a joint venture and a referral partner. When you start really thinking about that person, then you think about where they live, where they're going to be, right?
Yep.
Busy, you're going to think busy moms of small kids. Advertising at nightclubs probably wouldn't be the best venue for that. That's typically not where you're going to get really busy moms of very small kids. They're tired, they're not going to nightclubs then, right? But if you have a male hormone clinic, and you're wanting to do that, that might be one for you. So it changes, who you're looking for.
For sure. For sure. Um, you sound like you've been hanging out in Miami a lot lately. It's the nightlife.
The nightlife, yeah.
Um, okay, so let's tie the person. So you want to define that out, and then you want to define the problem that you solve, right? So with the problem that you solve, it's going to be something quite a bit more specific. Obviously, in the case of, for example, like a chiropractor, it could be as generic as back pain, right? Chronic back and neck pain, right? Um, but it also could be, skin issues. It could be whatever. But the problem is like what a lot of med spas will do, for example, is it's just sort of like we're a med spa. And then you wait for people to come in, and it's just like, well, what do you want help with? Because we could do this, or this. And you can't run ads that way, right? I saw an ad. I saw an ad like last week because I'm working on a project, And this guy was running this ad that was for regenerative stem cell knee pain, as well as neuropathy, as well as wound care. And it was all thrown in there into the same ad.
Wow. Yeah, that's all
And
over the place.
yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like, well, that's just not going to work. Right. So you have to speak to the specific person with the specific problem. Right.
Or
Um,
another example there is if you're dealing with just conjunctiva of the C7 umbilical metric, then, I mean, you have to say it in a way that normal people speak. Otherwise, they're not even going to know that you're speaking to them. So cut all of that doctor lingo out, because it's not the language of the market. They're not
yeah.
going to know that you're even speaking to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the it's like, well, we have our we do this special treatment for this special bone, for this special chemical, for this special whatever it is, and people are buying to solve problems. So you have to speak to them in their language, right? So, instead of, we adjust the atlas and this with the brainstem and this with the exact angle, it's more along the lines of, are you suffering with chronic neck pain and headaches that sometimes radiates down into the arm, right? Like, so now you're speaking about what they're experiencing rather than
Yeah, the
I don't.
what's in it for them is very important for that. So, in that same vein, were you a victim of a car wreck and got whiplash, or do you experience really bad migraines and that sometimes devolve into dizziness or even vertigo?
Mm-hmm.
Well, blah, 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 blah. Those are very specific types of people. And then suddenly your phone's blowing up because you've really spoken to them,
Yep.
on that. So you need to, put that in there, or,
Yep.
or you were, I'm thinking about med spas and things like that. They wouldn't say, well, come on in and get your five, we're doing 4 vials of Botox for $19 each and blah, 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 blah. That's commodity that's just on price, as opposed to someone who has a package where they could make someone look 10 years younger,
Yep.
younger without surgery or anything really invasive. Maybe they've got a
Yeah.
light treatment or something like that in only 4 visits,
Yeah.
right? That's much more specific and really is targeting someone,
Totally.
who wants that.
Yeah. So the next thing we would usually talk about would be root cause. I think we might cover that in the next episode, because root cause is kind of taking the problem deeper, right? So how does this person see how you solve the problem differently than somebody else who's claiming to solve the same problem, right? Um, but let's jump into the next element, which would be your purpose. And what you want to think about here is the fact that, I always think of the Steve Jobs quote, which is, he says, marketing is about values. It's not about telling them about your product. It's not about, like, do you need to know what the features and benefits are? Yes. But that isn't really what motivates people to buy, right? um when you think about the way Apple did their marketing, it was like, people like us, people like this use Macintosh. If you want to be this type of person, you're going to use a Macintosh, right? It wasn't like, here's the size of the screen, here's the CPU power, here's the RAM. All of those features are good. They all do a great job, right? Like, they all have high-end features, but the fact is your purpose is much more is a much more powerful motivator to get people to want to take action, right? So, an example of our company Brand Lab, um is like, what we have is, we have a purpose where it is to help small business owners achieve their dreams. we exist to help small business owners achieve their dreams, right? And so then as the founder, I have a personal story of why that's important to me. And we try to implement that into everything that we do, where it's like, I want people to feel that we care about helping them achieve their dreams, that we don't want them to be stuck, that we don't want them to be, bogged down in the day to day and overwhelmed. Like, we want to help you achieve the dream lifestyle that you're after, which is why you became an entrepreneur in the first place. And so that's an important part to have in your, as a part of your marketing strategy.
Rory, you actually meant exist, and I think it's such an important thing to jump onto, because when you're able to express that, your purpose, that really is the definition of your economic right to exist. If there are 7,000 toilet paper manufacturers, why does the place need another one? So really, the economic right to exist is what gap are you going to fill that isn't over-serviced, or it isn't covered already. Now, every single practice owner that I have ever worked with starts with a story. They have a story of why they wanted to be a doctor or a dentist or a med spa or say he or she, okay. But they'll have a personal connection to wanting to do that in the first place. And if you are able to hit on that as a purpose, it is an incredibly powerful way to attract people where that's going to be meaningful. So your economic right to exist is connected to why you are doing what you're doing. And this is not a marketing thing. It's not something that you put a spin on so that you can get ahead. If you can make this meaningful, then working just feels so much easier. It doesn't feel like work anymore.
I was going to say your purpose should be that open-ended, like we help small business owners achieve their dreams. That is what, when anyone asks you or anyone in your clinic, that what do you do for a living? That's the type of purpose you want them to say. You want everyone that you work with, all your staff, to use that purpose. And you want that purpose to invite and almost demand from the person who asked it the follow-up question of, well, how the heck do you do that? Or you want it to be interesting and invite a conversation. If you're sitting at a bar, you're at a festival, and so somebody goes, hey, what do you do? I used to say, I sell air. And they go, well, how the heck do you do that? Well, I'm the only provider of liquid O2 in all of northern Texas and Oklahoma. So if you're a doctor, you'll never have a patient die from not having enough oxygen being hooked up to a concentrator, because that's what happens right now. People are in concentrators. Their power goes out. They cannot afford the electricity bill, or gets clogged up with air. So we're the only ones who can help save your patients. Oh, wow. Well, tell me more.
Yeah.
And that was the conversation. The promise, which is what we're going to talk about right after. You have this purpose, and then well, how the heck do you do that? Then what's your promise? So in that situation, my promise is we'll get the purest air that's portable, and you'll never have a patient that will die being hooked up to their oxygen, right? That is a big, strong purpose.
Yeah.
And so if your thing is, well, I want the people of San Diego to live their best life and live it pain-free. Well, how do you do that? Well, I have a, 5-step spinal protocol, and when they do that, then I can help whatever, get it through that. But I'm not saying it well, but we'd work on that. Whatever your thing is, you could develop that, and people go, wow, tell me more. Right? That's a lot better than knowing that your staff is out at some festival somewhere, their family asks them, what do you do? I work for a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Womp womp. Well, that's the end of that story. And the other way, you can have evangelists to your cause, and you can wake up excited to do what you do. You want it on your website, you want it on your cards and everything.
Yep. Yeah. So just to define what you're going for when you define your promise. Again, so we're kind of moving on from purpose, and we're now talking about promise. The purpose should be, it's the thing that literally gets you out of bed. There should be personal investment in this idea. Like, you should be excited to wake up and help whatever group of people you want to help. And everyone on your team should be excited about that as well. But then when we get into the promise, we basically want to take that purpose, we want to clarify it and make it very concrete. and we want to, once it's concrete, we kind of want to make it a little bit gimmicky, right? And I don't, what I mean is think of it in terms of like, a marketing thing. So like price match guarantee, right? That's a marketing promise. It's a guarantee that we will match any price. Okay. And that's sort of gimmicky, right? It's kind of like, well, it doesn't tell me why you're better or anything. But when you're a very large company and you have tons of money to market and you have and like everybody knows about you, they kind of just know, well, like I'm just going to go there because they're going to give me the lowest price no matter what. Right. And over time, you earn a big footprint in the market because you always do a price match guarantee. So how do you do this for a clinic? It could be something like we help middle-aged women turn back the clock and feel and look 10 years younger. Right. So it's like there's this promise being made. And that's the thing that would literally go right on the header of your website. Like that's what you want to be known for, is making that promise. Right. You're dropping it right there on the header. Everybody has to see it. It's just like, this is who we are. We make this promise to the marketplace. And you can see, like, in order to make that promise, you have to define who the person is. You have to define what the problem is, right? You've got to define all this stuff in order to get to the point of being able to make a clear, concise, really obvious promise that is going to work. So, does anyone else want to add anything on promise?
I had one that was so great because I have a swimming pool and I have a thing about the pump and all the chemicals, and I can't get on top of it. So it keeps going green, and then I have to get people out and it goes green. I have to get them out. And when I was looking for someone to actually help me out, and I look at how they're positioning themselves, the one that I called, and the only one that I called, which is terrible, I know, but their promise was green to clean. And I was like, yeah, you're for me. And immediately,
that's what I need.
Yeah,
to clean.
that is that's a great one.
Yeah, that's well played by them, right? Because that's probably what they figured out is, hey, 90% of the calls that we get are when someone says my pool is green. Why not just make that your marketing promise right there on the front, green to clean? Like
plumbers, if you only want us to come out once.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
You could also throw in there for plumbers on time.
Yes.
That would be a good one to
for the royal flush.
Okay, well let's wrap that up. Well, let's royally flush this episode. But before you do, like next episode, what we'll do is we'll complete this document, right? We'll get through to the point where you've really got a marketing strategy. But before you guys go, please pay the fee for this podcast, which is to refer a friend, send an email, post it on social media, let people know, hey, this podcast is awesome. This helps me. It's helping me grow my business. I'm so much more empowered as a business owner. Share this with the world so we can get more listeners and more viewers, and make sure that you are paying it forward, because we're providing this free of charge, but there is an action you need to take to pay the fee. So,
and please also share with us. We'd love to hear from you. What are we doing great? What would you like more of?
Get on there and review it. Yeah, review the podcast. Say, hey, 5 stars. If it's anything less than 5 stars, don't leave a review. Only leave it if it's 5. I think I'm legally, technically not allowed to say that, but just
Can we edit that bit out?
No, just leave it in there. We're outlaws here.
Yeah, just go to superclinicproject.com. You can even leave us a voicemail. If you had a question about this, we will listen to that question on air if you want us to. If you don't, just tell us, but we will answer it, and we'll answer you back on email. And superclinicproject.com.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Go leave a review, recommend a friend, and we will see you on the next episode. See ya.
You've been listening to the Super Clinic Project podcast. If you like what you hear, subscribe and stay tuned for further episodes of the Super Clinic Project podcast.